Welcome to Busted Speakers, I'm Alex,
And I'm Lee.
and today we're reviewing our first ever posthumous album, very sadly, from the legendary pioneer of rock and roll, rock music, Chuck Berry, who sadly passed away earlier this year in March. Chuck Berry is obviously a music legend for what I've said earlier, pioneering the genre rock and roll, way back in the 50s. I don't know, like adopting from blues rock and adding a bit of a rockabilly swing to it with crazy solos. Like if you listen back to his early singles, he was the man. Like rock and roll, you can pretty much say he was pretty much the best of the genre. I know there's obviously other guys who are good, but when you look back on it, I'd say his singles were probably my favourite. So obviously the loss of Chuck Berry is a big one, but he hasn't actually released any new music since 1979, so this is nearly 40 years of material potentially, but as I gathered as he got older, I think this is just material he tried to make before he passed away. Sadly, that didn't quite happen, but Lee, do you want to talk about like what Chuck Berry means to you, or if you've had much experience with him?
Chuck Berry is always a name that goes around in the rock community when you watch a lot of interviews with bands that you look up to, that we look up to, that are contemporary for this time. For example, Foo Fighters. I know that Dave Grohl used to be a big fan of Chuck Berry, if I don't remember wrongly. So no matter where you're going, you always hear about Chuck Berry. And I actually never
Yeah.
took the time to listen to him because I always imagine him to be this, yeah, rock and roll guy, and that is basically what he is. And I don't know, for some reason I might have come over some of his songs before, but it never really drew me in. It never caught my attention because I've always known how early 50s rock and roll sounded like, and for me it was always very samey in a way. It was always that guitar leading the role during the intro,
Yeah.
and then a lot of these rock and roll songs are very similar in terms of the rhythm and how the melody goes. Maybe the pitch or maybe the tones are a little bit different from song to song. But yeah, I never really got into it before now actually, and I think that this album has opened my eyes a bit for what rock and roll really is. It wasn't as samey as I thought it would be. It is actually Chuck Berry has more of a various style on this album. Of course, there are songs that are a bit similar, but it's something that I can actually listen to and tolerate nonetheless. So
That's actually
it
quite
was,
interesting that you're not already like familiar too much with his music at all, because I could see someone who's a big fan of Chuck Berry, who, fair enough, will be most of the people who listen to this album, aside from people who obviously heard about his passing and his legacy of music and check this out just because it's his last release, his final word, his swan song. But there are some songs on here that take the rock and roll formula too much, like they're like generic versions of his like 50s versions and of his songs, some of them. For example, Johnny Be Good is pretty much his best and most famous song. You may have heard it. It was
yeah, of
used at the
course.
end of the... Yeah, that's like his key song. And Lady Be Good, that song it uses the exact same opening, the exact same melodies, almost the exact same lyrics, except it's basically the same song as Johnny Be Good, except it's referring to Lady Be Good instead of Johnny, so I have mixed feelings about this, because it's essentially a cover of his own song, and it is technically one of the best songs from the 50s, so it's not a bad song, but this just feels sadly like he was near the end of his life, and uh, I don't know what happened, but it feels like maybe the label were pushing him to have another song. And how many times has he performed Johnny Be Good live? Maybe it was quite easy for him to make a similar song to it. But I mean, it's technically the same quality level as one of the best songs of the 50s, but I felt like that song, and only that song, was just done in a bit of an unconvincing light. Yeah, just that one.
Sorry, what was the last thing you said?
Just that song. Every other song I was pretty positive about. It's just that one left me a bit wrong, like a bit mixed
Lady Be
feelings.
Good. You don't like it at all, or
Well, well, it's just the same song as Johnny Be Good. There's no point to it. It's derivative of
oh,
it.
I don't know. I don't have the same view as you on the song. I actually liked it quite a bit. I mean, I'm still a bit new to this genre. I'm sure that you are. I'm not sure if you've listened a lot to rock and roll or not, but um, I paid a lot of attention to the narrative or the lyrics in the song, and it seems like he's kind of continuing to tell the story that is behind Johnny, which is the character of the first story that he told
Yeah.
about in Johnny Be Good. Um, and I like this because you hear about this girl who actually fell in love with this great rock artist who probably is the alter ego of Chuck Berry. I'm not sure, but might be. And yeah, she fell in love with him. Followed him around. She basically didn't know if she had him or not. And then there's some type of a climax in the, I don't know if you read the lyrics, but there's something happening at the end of the song that I didn't quite understand about she starting to cry or something. I'm not sure, but
I
it
think
kind of
I think
captivated me.
the character of Johnny Be Good in the original song was that he wasn't that good of a guy, obviously. He
Yeah.
moved around from town to town. He was a bit of a rocking like guy. He probably had a car that he like drove around from town to town. That was obviously really
Had it with the
fictionalized.
ladies.
Yes, so Lady Be Good is probably just one of his chicks, or maybe one that came the closest to being his lady. So
Yeah.
maybe Johnny Be Good moved to another town. Clearly, the lyrical side of that is the best side of that because it's the one that actually tries something new. And I don't
Mm.
hate it. I don't, I, I just don't like the fact that it's basically the same song. I know why they did it because it would be easy to do. And yeah, continuing the story
Yeah.
is probably the best way they could have done this. But considering how creative some of the other songs on here are, I just feel like this was a leftover, something he did in the studio for fun, almost. Which some of these songs do sound like, and some of that's great because it's great hearing Chuck Berry having fun in the studio. For
Yeah, yeah, of
example,
course.
yeah, for example, there's a. Actually, I think this was live. 3 out of 4 time enchiladas. Did you hear that this was like it had a lot of audience recording on this? I'm pretty sure it's live.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounded like a live song. I don't think it's recorded in the studio. It was quite different from all the other songs as well, which is something that I liked. I like that there's a difference when you listen to the album from song to song. Um,
Yeah.
and the first thing that kind of stood out to me on that song is that the melody is driven forward by the piano. I know there's a lot of guitar here as well, especially there's some solos in between each of the verses, but it's mainly the piano here, and
Mhm.
uh, it seems like Chuck is focusing more on just having fun, uh, singing, and the guitar is glazing across the surface of the soundscape. It seems like, um, and yeah, I actually enjoyed this song quite a lot, and the lyrical theme is actually quite funny as well. Um, or it's funny, but it has a serious tone to it as well. If you know what I mean. He
Yeah, I get
says
what you
there's
mean.
this one line. There's this one line where he says it's a mean old world, and we all gotta live our lives. So it's like, yeah, at the end of the day, we're all gonna die. There's a lot of pain that we're gonna experience, but hey, I want to sit here and eat my enchiladas and have it with some women and drink some wine and just fuck it.
It's really touching hearing the crowd cheer him on this as well, showing how
Hmm.
appreciated they are of his new stuff. Because I'm not sure. I mean, he hadn't recorded a new song since 1979, so I'm guessing that this is like a song he maybe created in the 90s or maybe even 2000s that had been a live staple for a little while, and this is the first time he's released it on an album. So it's really happy to hear this. And going to the piano part of this song, I'm actually happy that it's a prominent driving rhythm of a lot of the songs on the album because piano isn't a big part of Chuck Berry's sound at all. So it's quite
Mm,
interesting hearing it being quite a strong part of a large number of songs on here. Maybe it's just because he has a great pianist in his band, which will be the case, but it's cool because I'm hearing Chuck in a different vibe, a different
yeah.
band setting. Some songs on here, like Darling, um, I don't know how to feel. I do like it. It's just in the context that the fact he's passed away, this is like a bizarrely morbid duet between Chuck and his daughter, because they're joking about how
Mm,
old Chuck is getting, and he almost
yeah.
already refers to himself in the past tense, and it's a bit upsetting hearing him say how much time has passed away. Um, I
Yeah.
don't know how you felt about that one.
Uh, yeah, it's I don't know if I feel like it's ironic or fitting that he has a song like this with such a lyrical theme right like it's released right after he died, and it I see it as him passing on some quotes, some words of wisdom really to his fans maybe, because it's a very deep topic. He's basically talking about himself about to die. He's talking about the good times and the bad times that he had with his daughter,
Yeah.
and and the song ends with the phrase "life can pass so fast away," and it makes you feel quite. You feel this sense of melancholy, or you feel a bit depressed almost at the end.
Yeah, you really think about the mortality of life listening to a song like this.
Mm. You start to think, hey, maybe he had a lot of things that he still wanted to do, and
Yeah, because he would have been in his late 80s recording all of these, and
mm,
he doesn't sound old on a lot of this. He sounds a bit aged, but I don't think he actually sounds that old here,
I
at
was
all.
surprised to I was surprised to find out that he died when he was 90 years old. I
Yeah,
mean, I don't know if he exactly recorded these. As you said, they might have been recorded during the past 10 years or maybe longer back.
40
But
in there.
yeah,
Yeah,
but at the same time, he sounds very young on many of these songs. He sounds more like a maybe 40, 50-year old than a
yeah,
80, 90-year old, you know? So,
yeah. It's really surprising. So my
mm,
favorite song on here, and I have a few, but my absolute favorite is Dutchman.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
yeah, is that your favorite as well?
I can totally agree on that. But you can go on and just tell people why you liked it so much.
Well, I'm amazed by how creative this is, and maybe it's just creative in the context of it being Chuck Berry, because I have listened to a few albums by him. My favorite being St. Louis to Liverpool, which was one released in 1964, which I think the title's referring to the fact the British invasion of the Beatles had happened, but he was still on the scene, I guess. But anyway, he's had a lot of dependence on his old formula of rock and roll. And hearing this, second last song in his last album, sadly, it's great. It's a funky, like, it's a great instrumental line. It sounds really cool and fresh. And Chuck's back at it again with a cool spoken word, like lyrical line describing scenes like he's sitting in a bar talking about how he used to be and how he used to be a big star. It's almost as if he's like talking to young people in a dingy bar. It's just a really cool type of
Yeah,
song, and the story is cool, but just the whole sound of the song is cool too. And it feels like it could go on forever. Like it could be a 8 minute song, but it's under four, and it actually reminds me of Gil Scott Heron, who also did some spoken word stuff before he passed away on the album I'm With You. Except he sounded really hoarse and gravelly, and he was significantly younger than Chuck, so I'm impressed here. This is a really great song.
yeah, yeah. Again, it's the thing with the versatility on the album. I feel like the first three, or maybe it's the first two songs, or yeah, there were some of the songs that sounded a bit similar.
Yeah,
And I think that is just the constriction of the genre. I mean, I think on Dutchman he actually experiments a little bit more with blues. I'm not sure if you would agree with me on that, but it's not quite rock and roll, or am I wrong?
It's not quite rock and roll, that's true. I thought it was a bit more aligned to funky blues, sort of, that
Oh,
sort of thing.
yeah.
Which is not a world away from rock and roll, but it is detached from it, so it's cool hearing him in that light.
Mm. And yeah, I like the story. I don't know if this is probably a story that he told. I don't know if you read through the whole lyrics, but I think he's referring to the main character as a Dane.
Yeah, Dutchman,
Yeah,
yeah.
or he's also referring to him as an
Well, actually,
a dog, a dog.
I think the
Yeah,
narrator of the song is talking to a Dutchman because he says at the end, Dutchman, will you buy me a drink? If I
yeah.
recall
So
correctly. So
yeah,
yeah,
that is the bartender, I think, or at least that is what I visualized him to be.
yeah. There is a really strong, quite in-depth story, far more than I was expecting. Because some of these songs are like generic, very generic rock. I say generic, but they are just run-of-the-mill rock and roll type
Sure.
storylines, which aren't bad, but they just are there to fill in space. But this one had
Mm.
a lot of color to it, I felt like.
Mm. Yeah, it's basically about him falling in love with this girl, and he fell so deeply in love that it fucked him over. That is the short story, but yeah,
Another strong song is Wonderful
Jamaica
Woman.
Moon, Jamaica Moon.
Oh, I do like that one, I have to admit.
You,
What
you
do you
like
like about it?
Jamaica Moon or
I
Beautiful Woman?
well, you talk about Jamaica Moon. I do love that song as well, a little bit.
You love it a little bit. It's
Well,
when you use the word love, it's basically like you would like to play it over and over and over. I feel.
I'll love it, but I couldn't play it over and over. I'd need to play it now and then because it is a little bit dodgy. Just his Jamaican accent.
Yeah, I mean, again with the versatility, I don't want to keep
Yeah,
this as a repetitive thing. I'm making it into a repetitive thing here. I'm repetitive. The album is versatile in a way, to a
it is
certain
a key
extent.
key positive aspect to the album, though. The amount of variety on here.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't quite like Jamaica Moon. I felt it was a bit strange, a bit oddball with the way that he's turning around his pronunciation, his vocals, basically becoming this Jamaican character.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's changing his singing style, the guitar sound. Um, this the song sounds a bit tropical, but it's grounded in this rock and roll framework, I would say. And are there two vocalists here? I don't know if I listen wrongly or if I hear wrongly, but maybe it's just Chuck having two vocal lines or two vocal tracks on top of each other. I'm not sure.
I think it was more that because I did get Chuck's really strong Jamaican vocal track and then like one of him normally but under it slightly. So I think that's what
Okay.
it was. But I enjoyed this song for the same reason you enjoy a lot of other ones on here because it's such a big change. And
Mm.
um, aside from the accent, vibes, and lyrics, it is basically still grounded in rock. But even though it's Jamaican, there's obviously like no reggae or Jamaican originating genre, which makes sense
Of
here.
course,
Apart
yeah.
from, have you heard of the genre calypso?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was around in the 50s when Chuck was about, and that did, I believe, originate in from Jamaica and with people like Harry Belafonte, and that was quite a preeminent genre back in Chuck's heyday. So maybe that's what he was leaning back on to make this. But here's the thing with Chuck Berry: he's made a lot of bad joke songs. Like My Dinnerlin got to #1 in 1972 in America, and it's basically him making a big joke about his junk, basically. And is a very bad, humorous song that I
Yeah.
guess made people
Uh,
laugh back then, but it is not very. I mean, maybe you could listen to it for a laugh, but it's definitely not one of his best.
so that was making the hits or the hit
Yeah,
list.
that was a big number one in America, and people hate
Oh,
that song because it's his only number one, and he's made so many much better material than that.
yeah. Let's talk about the single from this album. It's the second song, "Big Boys."
Okay,
What do you think about that, Alex?
it's pretty good. It's just it does start with the exact signature opening chords of Johnny Be Good, but unlike
Yep.
Lady Be Good, it does become into its own song, and that is like one of the best openings to a song you can get. And it's a bit sad it's only on Johnny Be Good, so I'm pretty cool with it. It's very exciting, and he did make that up. That is his
Yeah.
own chord pattern, so it's fair enough he uses it actually. And it's a bit odd him talking about he wants to be one of the big boys, and he sounds quite youthful despite potentially being in his late 80s and wanted to be in the
Yeah.
big boys to get at some love, I guess.
Yeah.
But
But
apparently
I think
Tom,
that is a
uh,
theme that is going on throughout the whole album, though. That
yeah,
he is kind of going back to his past, being a bit nostalgic, maybe. And
I feel like that as well.
yeah, I mean, it's sadly enough, it's not like he had a lot to look forward to. I guess maybe he knew that he was about to die during the making of the song. I'm not sure, um, but yeah, I liked it though. Again, it's a cool narrative. It's a very personal narrative that it's telling, and it's very definitional, quite generic. This song, um, and it's a very repetitive song. But then again, what can you expect from this genre? Or actually, I'm not gonna say that because this album was obviously um, quite various. Um, but yeah, were there any other songs that you felt stood out that you want to mention or
Okay,
anything general about the album?
I'll mention Wonderful Woman just because it is the longest song here, and it just instantly impressed me because it's the first song on here, and it instantly impressed me how great his voice sounded because I expected it to be quite croaky, and I'm not sure how it sounded this good because I'm aware he consistently toured for most of his years after he made his last album. So, but people like Paul McCartney and Brian Wilson have been touring for ages, like their whole career, and they have seriously crippling voice problems now, despite being some of the best vocalists ever at some point in the Beatles and Beach Boys. And Chuck, he was significantly
He's
older than those guys, and he sounds about as good as back in the 50s. And not even that, this isn't even a normal rock and roll song, it's more of a blues jam. And
Yeah.
it's, it's more raw and loose than anything I've heard Chuck ever do. And I just love hearing his like guitar passages and solos because he was a really great guitarist. And
Yeah,
that's
that
a
is
really
also a
good
pattern.
opening.
That is another pattern that goes through here. There's a lot of solos. There's almost one solo for every verse that goes
Yeah,
by
yeah,
almost.
definitely.
Yeah. And that was quite fresh for me actually because I haven't really listened that much to the genre and I didn't expect it to be that way, but it just suddenly struck me like, oh man, this is very guitar based type of music. Um,
This isn't
again,
really normal rock and roll. That's the thing. The songs on here I'd class as normal rock and roll would be "Big Boys," "You Go to My Head," "Lady Be Good," "She Still Loves You," and
mm,
"Eyes of Man." All the other sort like "Darling" even is a more of a slow-paced duet sort of thing. That's not really rock and roll. So half of the album is quite different from the normal genre. So, and they're
mm.
all my favorite songs on here. So, I'm not saying the genre's bad, but it definitely there's a reason why it hasn't existed in the mainstream for the last 60 years. I'll say that.
Yeah. One more thing, I wanted to mention this. Tom Morello, did you know that he played the guitar on Big Boys?
Yes, I became aware of that after I listened to it, but I never caught it. But I guess the guitar playing was good, so good that he was on it. I guess I'm sure he's a
so,
fan.
so random. So random that he joined on
Yeah.
here.
Well, Tom Morello, he actually plays with a lot of people randomly. Like he was in Bruce Springsteen's band for a few years ago.
What?
He was on the High Hopes
Huh.
album. It is very odd. He likes collaborating with older musicians, so it seems.
Cool. Okay, shall we round off? Maybe it's turning a bit
Yeah,
long here.
yeah, it is.
So what do you think? Well, sorry, I got the line wrong. The line,
The line.
the line. What would you rate it, Alex?
Whoa, well. Now, some songs were obviously not that groundbreaking, but I'm going to give it to Chuck. He did really well here. Maybe it is 40 years worth of material and this is the best of it, and that's a bit sad considering some of the songs weren't so good if that is true. But if it was composed within a few years before his sad passing, then he did really great, and I'm going to give it 7.5 out of 10 because some songs were genuinely really creative, like Dutchman and even Wonderful Woman did something different from what he normally does, and even the not so great songs that we haven't even mentioned, they're just rock and roll formula 101, like She Still Loves You or Eyes of Man, are still pretty passable and listenable and decent quality. So yeah, 7.5 out of 10. A really, really fitting and as good of a like swan song album Chuck Berry could hope for. He did really well here. Rest in peace, Chuck. And yeah,
Yeah, would. I'm just gonna say my rating right away. I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10.
okay.
I again don't know that much about rock and roll. You have a little bit more experience with me than me, Alex.
Yes.
But this was actually quite refreshing. It was a very good introduction for me to rock and roll. Many of the songs here were quite interesting, as you said. He had a bit of diversity, versatility, but then again, there was also songs that were more definitional and grounded in the genre, and that is something that I liked. I never really got bored while listening to this. Of course, there are some songs that I didn't like that much. Um, you Go to My Head, not the most attractive song in my view. A
No.
last song, can't quite remember the name of it, but
Eyes of
um,
Man.
yeah, I didn't like that one that much. So, but yeah, I would suggest this album to my friends if I had the chance to. So yeah, 7 out of 10.
Yeah, so he did well here, and thanks for listening, guys. It was odd reviewing a posthumous album because sometimes we do trash on the artist. Well, not consciously, but sometimes they are trashy anyway. But that's not possible with a posthumous one, and we tried to be respectful, even on some of the more not so favourable songs. But yeah, hope you enjoyed the review, guys. Check out Leon Lee Likes Music, top reviewing content quite often. It's not every
Thanks,
day,
man.
but it's pretty consistent and it's pretty good. He's started up a new competition at the end of his videos where he draws an album cover, I believe, and you can like guess it, and there might be some prizes. I don't know. Is that the gist of it, Lee?
Yeah, that's basically it. You can win a surprise album if you guess the right question. So there will be a link to my channel in the comments in the
Yeah, and
description below if you want to
at
check
the
it out.
end of the video and the screen on the link as well. So yeah, thanks for listening. Check us out on social media. Tell us what you think of the album and subscribe. Bye, guys.
Bye.